Hi, this is technology reporter Kelly Hill with RCR Wireless News. I'm here today with Todd Dover, who is Territory Sales Manager for EXFO. How are you, Todd?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, good. Glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
So why don't we start off with a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what EXFO does, and then we're going to jump into a conversation on LTE field testing and talking about some best practices and headnet deployments.
Okay.
So let's start off with you and EXFO.
Okay. Yes, I am Todd Dover with EXFO. I am a territory sales manager in the southeast part of the United States. I've been in the industry for 13 years now, 6 years now with EXFO. EXFO, we are now on our 30th year being in business. We manufacture products for testing networks, fiber systems, transport systems, and then we also have monitoring systems. We've also been doing a lot of development in the wireless space. We see that's where the markets and the trends are going. But with that, a lot of our development and some of our new products and solutions have been around the backhaul infrastructure that drives these networks.
Okay. Great. Well, then let's jump right into the topic of heterogeneous networks.
Okay.
We're seeing different types of architectures both at the cell site, and I think overall in the mobile network when you start talking about, traffic moving indoors, distributed antenna systems, and also at macro sites, the move toward fiber to the antenna.
Right.
So, what are you guys seeing in terms of deployments and, and how those maybe differ from what we've seen in the past in the wireless network?
Well, what we've seen is a big demand in the surge of these networks, so there's a lot of them being built right now. But when we looked and started looking at the design of these networks, there's a common theme between what we're used to, let's say in a regular telephone or cable network, PON networks. Even wireless, they're all fed by a backbone. They're fed by fiber. What's been kind of different from these than the normal systems that we've been used to or that have been done over the last few years or many years is the tolerances that these networks have. They have very tight standards, very tight thresholds that must be met for these wireless, these DAS, these antenna systems to work. And the challenge is a lot of the technicians and the companies that are doing this type of work, fiber is very new to them. So to come in and give them a project that they don't have a lot of experience with, at least from a fiber backbone side, and give them very tight standards that are even tough for some of the more experienced firms to do, those are what's kind of different. The larger long-haul systems that have larger budgets, those are a little bit easier for them to work on. They've got more room for error. Not every network can be perfect. That's why we have loss budgets. But that's really the challenge, is trying to give them solutions and tools to where they can meet these very tight specs. I mean, some of the systems that I've seen have loss budgets as low as 3 dB for these spans, and if you have one issue within that span, that can make the system not work. So those have been the biggest challenges, is trying to show them what to do to meet the very tight tolerances that these systems have.
Okay. Okay. So you mentioned that challenge of working with fiber. Are there other challenges, when it comes to the number of wireless deployments that we're seeing now?
Well, some of the challenges that we're seeing that are kind of moving next generation are most of the carriers beyond the fiber. They do other types of testing. They have their RF sweep testing. They have their PIM testing. That's usually done by the contractors. The carriers have been really doing their Ethernet validation. There are some new standards that are in the market, CPRI, or Common Public Radio Interface, OPSI. These are some other standards. Most of the time the carriers have been doing that type of testing themselves, but what we're hearing from them is they're going to start migrating this to their contractors. So this is just another level of certification, training, understanding that these firms and these contractors will have to understand and get on board with, because that's going to be coming to them in the future.
Okay. Okay. Let's shift a little bit. We've talked about some of the challenges there. So let's address that. in the form of, what are some best practices from EXFO's view in terms of, how do you solve these problems, through, systems, through approaches, and best practices?
Well, what we did early on when we started identifying this as a potential new market for our solutions, we have a set of tools that we've been selling for years: OTDR, sources, power meters, fiber inspection probes. But what we wanted to do is actually go out and understand this market, understand what are some of the challenges that these companies are going to tell us that they're dealing with. So we spent a lot of time going out to these carriers, to their major engineering firms that are installing these or designing these systems, and actually walked projects to let them tell us what their challenges are. How are they installing these? What are their requirements? What are their methods and procedures that they're requiring? And then from that, we're able to look at, well, do we have certain tools in our toolbox that we can help them with today, or are there new things that we need to develop to help them out? So some of the things that we've been able to do is automate some of the processes. What we've seen from a fiber perspective is they normally had 2 tests that they had to run. They had to do a loss test to make sure their end-to-end span loss is right, and then also an OTDR test. What we looked at is, can we develop a solution to consolidate that into one test? And we were able to do that. We have a program and a solution that we call IOLM. It stands for Intelligent Optical Link Mapper. It's designed around OTDR technology, but it's a multi-pulse OTDR. So what we're able to do is send multiple signals, multiple tests, consolidate all that down into one overall test. But our accuracy within that test, we're able to take away the secondary test of coming back with an optical loss test set to validate that link. So from an operations standpoint, not only are we helping them by cutting out the amount of capital tools that they have to buy, but we're also cutting down on the engineering time, the construction time. If we're cutting their test time in half, job after job after job, that's a tremendous amount of savings for them, project after project. The next thing that we looked at, a big challenge that we see in fiber, and this is among all networks, is cleanliness of connections. Dirt is one of the biggest problems that network vendors have. This is true for major wireline carriers, cable companies, and wireless companies. And it's a big issue, and really what we've seen, it's been, well, what's worked in the past, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, a technician could go and just take a connector and rub it on his shirt and it's clean and he plugs it in. That's not good practice for today, and that's definitely not going to work. So what we've been able to do is, fiber inspection products and systems have been out there for many years. They started out with microscopes, they moved to video probes, and now the next generation is still video from a safety standpoint, but also an analysis that is built around industry standards. So a brand new tech that doesn't, if he looks at a screen and you ask 2 to 3 different techs, here's an image of a connector, tell me if it passes or fails, you may get 2 different answers from a bunch of different people. So it's can we create a tool that will take that guesswork away from these guys. So what we did is, developed a solution, and then working with industry bodies and standards like the IAC that have standards on in-phase geometry. Now we have tools that they can go in, they can test a fiber connection, and it's going to give them a pass-fail for them. There's no more guesswork for the tech. It's backed by the industry standards boards, and it's going to tell them, if it's good or bad. Kind of building onto that, now we're even automating the process even more with automation tools. That it's a fully automated process. The technician can just plug it into a connection, and it's going to automatically find it, center in on it, do the analysis in just a few seconds, and give him that reporting capabilities to go back and actually show the carriers, hey, here are the connection points, I've done my testing, I've validated that everything is clean. So those have been the things that we've kind of been working on from a product standpoint. We've also worked on the documentation, so the back office. That's another big component of the overall engineering cost, is the reporting data. If you look at some of these DAS systems, in one arena, they could have 1,000 fibers that they had to test. You combine that with RF testing, PIM testing, that's a lot of reporting that has to come back. So from our standpoint, we're doing the fiber inspection, we're doing the fiber validation. but that's still a big component of it. But what we've been able to do is, through some software and analytical software that we have, is make at least our portion of the testing very easy to do their closeout packages. So we have a program that we call Fast Reporter, where they import all of these fiber results into it, and very quickly they can see all of their cables, see which ones are within standards, which ones are not within standard. If everything's passing, very quickly create reports. But what we've seen a lot of is, okay, we can create a nice PDF report, but then they still have to transpose that data into some other Excel document that they have to turn into their wireless carrier.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've been able to do is actually take and work with them and actually automate that process, transfer our data into their Excel spreadsheet so they can go from hours of the way they have to do it in the past to just a matter of minutes if the data that they have in the system is good. And of course, we're assuming that whenever they're doing the reporting packages, they've done all their rework and everything is as it should be before they turn it in. But if we can automate the testing process, automate the inspection process, automate the reporting after the fact, that's what these carriers are looking for. They're looking for ways that if they have projects going on all over the world or all over the the country, that X contractor is doing the same thing as the Y contractor. So we've been able to create and help them have specific standards. So all of our tools have configurations that they manage, they own, and when they go to a project, they send these configurations out to their technicians, their contractors, and then they have the understanding that that job's going to be tested to this specific standard, and there's no guesswork around it anymore. So everybody's doing the project the same way, all across the country.
Okay, so standardization is a big part of best practices, it sounds like.
Standardization is a big part of it. They want control of the data. They want control of the test processes. So that's the big thing of making sure that a contractor in Florida is doing it the same way as a contractor in California, because most of the systems that they're putting in, from a DAS standpoint, they have their standards. They're going to have their element standards. The connector should not be above this or whatever. And then they're also going to have standards for the overall loss. But most of these are very common. But what they want it to do is they want it documented and controlled to where when the technician sending in his data, in the reporting, they can see, well, what configuration did you use? Did you use the configuration we sent you, and that's the standard? If you didn't test to the configuration that we want you to test to, well, then you have to go back and retest that network. So that's the big thing that they've been looking for, is a way to control and manage the test process and the data as well.
Okay. You mentioned something that I wanted to follow up a little on, and that is, the testing for the cleanliness of the connection. Now,
Right.
When you're indoor versus outdoor, are there particular differences in those environments that make one or the other more challenging?
Well, of course, if you're outdoors, depending on the surroundings that you have, if you have a cabinet and it's windy or it's raining, well, then you're going to have challenges with that. But as far as the process on how to clean, the biggest thing that I've seen has been, one, a lack of understanding in the process of how to clean, or a standard of what's good or bad, and making sure everybody is on the same standard that way of this is going to be passing and this is going to be failing. But one of the big challenges that I've seen is, one, a lot of these companies that are coming into this, or a lot of these technicians, they don't have the experience, is they don't understand what tools, what materials you actually use to clean with. You can't just go buy alcohol at your local CVS or drugstore and expect to be able to use that on a connector without it causing problems.
Yeah.
So some of the things that I've seen, of course, everybody wants to save money. They want to spend as little as they can. But when we start talking inspection and you start talking about cleaning, a little bit of extra money spent on your tools, on the cleaning materials for a higher quality cleaning product, it pays off in the end more than the extra dollar that it might have cost for that extra, that piece of cleaning material. But that's been one of the biggest challenges that I've seen on some of the jobs that I've been on recently, have been when you get there and they're having problems and you look and try to start breaking down as they're testing, and all right, well, what are you using? How are you setting up your equipment? Do you have everything prepared before you're ready to start? Then they just have the wrong cleaning materials, or they didn't know that I can't use this on a connection because it doesn't dry completely. It's going to damage it. It's going to cover up the core of the fiber. Those have been some of the things that I've run into on most projects that I've been in, it's just not having the right products to get started with, not from a capital or from a an equipment standpoint, OTDRs, pen testers, whatever. It's been the consumable products, the cleaning products, being prepared, making sure they have all of that. If they're not prepared with that, then the project's not going to go well.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about where things are going. How do you see, trends moving forward in this area, and what do you see in the next few years?
Well, the next phase of it is, we feel like we've got the fiber side, figured out for the projects that we're working on today. The next phase that we're seeing, I kind of touched on it earlier, is the transport piece. So the carriers migrating some of that testing that they've been doing on their own to the contractors that are already there. So the SIPRI testing, the offsite testing, we see that as kind of the next phase. So we're trying to, we built solutions to kind of future-proof our contractors to be able to kind of consolidate their tools, do this in the same product that they're doing their OTDR, their loss testing with. So that's kind of the next phase. But again, we're talking with the carriers to see how far down the road it is, so we can try to prepare our customers with future-proofing their solutions, because contractors, they want to consolidate as many of the tools. They don't want to have 10 products out there to run one project. So if they can go ahead and future-proof their systems and the products they're buying today to be able to add additional capabilities and features without having to add new hardware, that's what they're interested in. Kind of the next phase also is the automation. How can we further automate this process? Are there ways that we can use the cloud to help drive efficiency? Can we make it to where a technician might be on the East Coast, a manager on the West Coast, and he can still manage and see the project in real time as they're doing testing without having to be physically on site? So that's the next phase of where we see, and we have tools that can do that today, but that's also a vision that the contractors, the carriers, the engineering firms have to see as well. So we're going in there and educating them on ways that we can do that. One, to save them cost, save them travel, but ways that they can see products in real time, see their testing in real time, be able to have their closeout packages done within a few minutes after the technician finishes, even though your person doing the closeout package is on the other coast of the United States. So that's kind of the next phase, is they want it automated. They want to be able to completely control the situation. So the other things that I'm seeing of kind of the next phase, and some of the other challenges that have been there, is more certification. The carriers are really pushing on certification for anybody working on their networks.
Oh, okay.
They've seen challenges of people getting on site that just don't have the experience that they actually need. So they're really pushing toward training and certification and building that in as a further requirement to make sure that these networks are done right and done on time. There's usually a lot of pressure, especially on some of the DAS venues. Maybe they're trying to get a link up before a big sporting event is scheduled, and you've only got a limited amount of time to get this done. So they really want to make sure that all their processes, their procedures are being followed, and the people that they have on site are actually certified and have experience. So that's kind of the next wave that we see. The automation piece is the most exciting that I see, is just ways that we can go and automate either the testing application, making it where really a technician is just plugging it in, hitting start, letting the unit tell them what to do next through either diagnostics that we have built in to where they can tell them what to do. But the automation piece of trying to get those test results back to someone in real time, or somebody that can watch them in real time, that's the next step, because that can be a huge savings on the time that it takes to do these projects, and really time equals money for these guys.
Okay. Great. Well, I've been talking with Todd Dover, Territory Sales Manager with EXFO. Todd, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you. And if anybody has any other questions or interested in some of the solutions that we have, they can go to our website at exfo.com/FTTA and see our entire line of solutions and products toward this industry.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.